Good evening and welcome everybody to another edition of Brian Plays. Today I will be playing a classic for the NES, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, we'll go for the info screens before we play. Now this game was made by Ultra Games, which was a shell corporation for Konami. Now, Konami was a third-party licensor of video games, and Nintendo was up and coming, and by far the number one video game seller in the world. So, when they had a contract with these third-party companies, there were strict rules, and I believe Konami was only allowed to make 5 games a year for Nintendo. So how do you avoid missing out on making more games? Well, you have a shell corporation and name it Ultra. And now Ultra can come to Nintendo with 5 more games, so Konami can double their output. And it worked, Ultra, back then kids really didn't know, but Ultra also published Metal Gear as well. But Ninja Turtles is probably their most famous game. So we're at level, the first area. I think they call them areas. This is the Turtle Sewer. And basically you can switch and change the turtles at will by going to the pause screen like this. And basically each turtle has their own I guess you could say their own reach, weapon strength, but they're different basically in an offensive manner. Defensively, there's no difference. Leo has decent reach and he's basically your average turtle. Donatello is a powerhouse. His weapon might be slow, but it has the furthest reach and it's the strongest. Raphael is just a terrible weapon because it's basically a little extension of his fist. And Michelangelo is pretty much the worst. I think Raphael's Sai has strength though, and that's why Michelangelo would be considered the worst. So basically every turtle has a life bar. If you're watching this, it's because you played it before, most likely. And just revisiting memories. The trick of the game is, when you're up to difficult spots, you can use your weaker turtles. But never let any turtle lose all its health, otherwise they're captured, and then you'll have to find them in each of the later levels. I think from level 3 and above. So what you do is you always got to manage the health of your characters. Some spots will favor some turtles, and that's pretty much it. When this game came out, kids have already seen the first 2 seasons of the Ninja Turtles cartoon. The movie wasn't out yet, and this game came out in 1989. I think around the middle of the year. So the cartoon was becoming one of the most popular things for kids. But a lot of the criticism of this game stems from the fact that not a lot of cartoon-related characters, like this frog here. Do you remember him from the cartoon? No. A lot of the enemies were just made up. But what a lot of kids didn't really know about was the comics. And I breezed through like the first few comics. I can't really say for a fact if any of these characters were in it, but what the game developers had was inspiration from the first couple of seasons of the cartoon and from the comics. That's why the cover of the game, all the Ninja Turtles have the red bandana. That's not an error by any means. That's from the comic, because in the comic, every turtle had the red bandana. You can only tell them apart through the weapons they had. So that was a big criticism of the game. I mean, you have some characters like Shredder, Bebop, Rocksteady, but these characters are pretty much no-name, generic characters. The game did have great graphics, though. The sprites were fantastic. I mean, each character did have its own personality, like the fire guy. But basically, these characters were unknown. But to be fair, a lot of the characters introduced in the cartoon, they did come later on anyway. Because, you know, this game takes kind of a more serious tone where, you know, the cartoon was more like slapstick. Shredder wasn't that menacing. He was, you know, a goofball. And the villains would always fight amongst each other. Whereas the comics were more serious. See, Donnie, he just took out all those flying enemies. If you had another turtle, like Michelangelo, it would take multiple shots. Even Leonardo. So, my guy was Donnie. He was my favorite turtle anyways. So, in this first area, you're saving April O'Neil. And here she is, and there's Rocksteady. We already saw Bebop before. Now, there's a trick over here everybody remembers, but we're not going to see it now. Usually you climb up on that platform, and with Donnie's bow staff, you can reach down and hit him, and you don't even have to risk getting hurt. And yes, I still have the cartridge for this game and the NES, and both work apparently. And the next level is the dam. Some positives about the game: the music and the graphics. I can remember playing these levels when I was like 3 years old. I guess that's a foot soldier, but there's also another type that looks just like a foot soldier. And when you hit him, he turns into smaller sizes. So, I don't really know what that is, a member of the Foot Clan. Now, if you want to go back to another con of the game, it's the enemies. Not just the types, like this chainsaw guy, but when you leave the screen and come back, the enemies constantly respawn. You know, it's a problem that a lot of NES games had based on the memory and how they were programmed. And that could be a problem. And there's also the random nature of the enemies, too. You never know what enemies you'll see. Like, when you climb this ladder here, so you get these weird guys that keep on crouching down. Sometimes you'll get flying enemies. Sometimes you'll get the tall robot that spits flames. So, I mean, that factors in to a lot of the frustration of the game. Sometimes you have to get lucky with the draw of enemies. And another thing that happens is when you get hit, sometimes you'll fly backwards, like in Castlevania. And if you're on a platform or an edge that you can't afford to fall off, you can die easily. You see, Donnie's the best. His bow just goes right through every enemy. Another part, oh, perfect. Another part of the game is the tricky jumps. There's a few jumps in this game that are very unforgiving. So basically, I guess Shredder and the Foot Clan, they put bombs in the river. I would say that's the Hudson River. Maybe because it's more blue, it's not the East River. And this is the area where most people, when you bring up the game, they recall this level. And mostly out of frustration, because the gameplay just changes dramatically. But in reality, it's not that hard. It's, you know, you trial and error. You usually get a little further each time after you die, but you will remember where the locations are, and it becomes one of the easier levels. Oh, the seaweed. That's another thing people remember. The electric seaweed. Basically have to have patience. And if you miss a bomb in the beginning and make it to the end, there's no way you'll make it back. I think I forgot a bomb down here. So basically, you know, just talking from level 1 and level 2, this is a game that you either love or you hate. Perfect run. For those of you who haven't played this game, it's hard to describe, but there's a lot of resistance when you're swimming. You can really feel it. You think you would be able, especially when coming back, see there's a current pushing you. So it's very hard to get past that without getting shocked at the end. So usually you would put in Michelangelo or Raphael to take some of the damage. But playing this game a lot, you know, you can trust your best turtle. See, they barely give you enough time. And there you go. So now with April rescued, the dam saved, you can go home, and that's the end of the game. Or is it? I always found this part funny because Shredder finds his way on the TV and his hand is poking out through the screen. Unless the Ninja Turtles had a 3D TV. So now we reach Area 3, which a lot of people say represents like Wall Street. I remember this area as a maze, pretty much. Those are the tall robots with the flames. This area has a very important item that is crucial if you want to beat the game. And that's the scrolls. It's one of your secondary weapons that you can have. And I believe this area, and I'm not sure about Area 4, but I think Area 5 has the scrolls also. If you keep entering and coming out with the scrolls and stocking up, it'll make the final level a lot easier. See, that's an example of poor enemy placement. If you can't make that jump that you just saw there, you would have to go all the way around and up. And when you see the gap, instead of trying to jump over it, just walk over it. I remember that used to be a frustrating part. So if you had a turtle with, you know, the lowest amount of energy, you would switch to them and take the pizza. I like how this map, or this whole area in general, kind of looks like a precursor to the Grand Theft Auto games. Especially the 2D one for the original PlayStation. I mean, you could shoot, you can have drive-by shootings and you can run over the Foot Clan. So it's not that much different than Grand Theft Auto 1. Some of these buildings will actually be useless. It's hard to remember after so many years. I think the last time I played this, I probably played this once after the year 2000. Especially for Raph and Michelangelo, the secondary weapons are important to have. Usually I don't go down here, actually, I just realized. Now if you fall in the water, you don't die, but you get taken out all the way to the beginning, and you have to go again. I mean, you could fall in these pits 20, 50 times, so it does get frustrating in the game. Those are the scrolls that I was talking about. Now, we'll continue, but if you're not confident in your ability to beat the game at the end, you would leave this place now and come back, and those scrolls should reappear, and you would keep stocking up on them with all the turtles. And basically, if you survive to the end, with all those scrolls, you will win. That's the character down there that resembles the foot soldier. So I don't know if it's the guy from the beginning that throws the little shuriken star, or if that's a member of the Foot Clan. It's important to collect the missiles as well for the turtle van, so you can break through those barriers. I don't remember going in this area in quite a while, but I guess we'll check it out. You'd have to get out to cross the bridge. It's very dangerous to walk in the overworld without your van, because those crusher vehicles, I think, instantly kill your turtle. Or have them captured, I guess you could say. Michelangelo's nunchucks are as useless as those sausage nunchucks he used in the second movie at the beginning. Dead end, but that full pizza would have really helped if you had a turtle that was near death. And you see how the enemies just respawn? That's probably one of the biggest gripes of the game. Along with the lack of familiar characters. For those short jumps, you really just have to tap the controller. It's hard, but the physics of this game are very illogical. If you jump, it's like you're on the moon. That was a waste of time, I guess, except for the missiles. Forgot to plug my phone in. Hold on. So basically just follow this road and it'll eventually go back up. Most people would prefer the sequels to these games, which are more arcade beat 'em up style. One day I will play the arcade game. Maybe I'll do the arcade game and the second Ninja Turtles for the NES, which is basically, well, it is a port of the arcade game with a couple more levels added in to give it length. And then I'll play Turtles in Manhattan too. And eventually we'll do the Turtles in Time. I think most people would agree that Turtles in Time or the arcade game are the best Ninja Turtle games. I don't know what I would like, what I like as number one. You know, I honestly think this one might be my favorite Ninja Turtle game. Because of the nostalgia factor. It was the first one I ever played, and you know, it was difficult when you died. I mean, you didn't have a lot of games as a kid. You would just start up and try to get a little further. So I remember when this area, I used to die all the time. I used to fall through the rope for some reason. So you know, it's fun always advancing a little further. With the beat 'em up games, you know, eventually you get good and you can just go right through the game and beat it. This game has a higher learning curve. So I think that's why I like it the most. There's a lot of games now that fans make. I don't think there's a remake of this game, but there's a lot of that would be nice if there was a hack of this game or a mod. But I think they do have they have Ninja Turtles, something about I have to look up the name and I'll post it. But it's a game that has all the characters from the cartoon, even like Irma and Vern. And it's like a beat 'em up game too, but there's a lot of references to the cartoon. And these are the last barricades before we get to the end. Now in this mission, Splinter is captured. And I think the whole point of this game is, I think Shredder has some kind of beam or energy weapon, and he's going to use it to, he's going to take it away so that Splinter can be turned human. think it loosely follows one of the cartoons. But in this level, he's captured by... it's kind of like a mecha turtle. It's not Metalhead or Slash, but I think maybe the cartoon was inspired by that character. That jump right there was the hardest in the game, or the most annoying to screw up. And did you see how that fire guy appeared out of nowhere? That's a problem. Like, you just want to creep the screen over when you make these jumps. Because if you screw up and get hit by them, you're falling in the water. You can just let this guy fall too, I believe. This should take us to the city area again. Oh no, you have to go for the house first. Yeah. That's right. This is probably the most catchy tune of the whole game. See how you can change the style of enemies just by entering and exiting and then re-entering. Alright, here's, I think his Mecha Turtle, I think was his name. I guess Metalhead was inspired from this character. Just follow his patterns. You can hide around there, but then you have to jump to escape. And then you realize that that was just a machine hiding this. You could really use that small platform to your advantage. Just study his pattern. That should be it. Oh! I guess this area is like JFK, you could say. I don't know why there's planes flying over the runway, shooting, dropping bombs on you. See how powerful the scroll is? That's what you can use later on in the Technodrome. Now this area is much like the last area, except you don't have the van. You're in the overworld, but there's multiple routes you can take. As long as you have grappling hooks, you're fine. For some reason, I just remember falling through those ropes. I don't know what it was. But he jumps automatically. I think I was fooling around and they used to fall through. Once again, nobody needs pizza. If you get too many enemies on the screen, like you see now, it does glitch out. That happens to a lot of NES games. It's just based on the memory when they were programmed, that they just can't handle so much activity on one screen. Alright, so when you leave here, I'm not sure if you have an option yet, but eventually you'll have a split in the road. No, not yet. And you know, you could take multiple routes to get to where you want to go, but some are easier than others. And yeah, I was gonna say I don't even think you have to kill him, but you do. The things you really have to worry about most in this game are the one-hit kills. That's being run over by those vehicles, which really isn't a problem. Falling into flames, which are in this level, and there's also these closing walls that I always remember. I mean, you can have a perfect game and then have it all ruined in that one little room, because it's very sensitive trying to fit into small passages. You'll see very soon. If you fall on these spikes, you get hurt, but you don't die. It's pretty hard to get lost in this area, because the buildings are numbered. Obviously you want to go to the higher numbered buildings. I forget which one is the best way to go. It's usually further away. Yeah. Now the other manhole might have had another exit, maybe. I'm not sure where, but it could also be a dead end. In that case, if you lost a turtle, there might be a turtle in there to rescue. Or it could just be a dead end with a pizza item. It's funny how all those enemies are down there. Where do they hide them? Full pizza. Oh, this was a dead end. Well, that's what I was talking about before. You can comment what your favorite turtle was if you enjoyed watching the show as a kid. Me personally, I liked Donatello. He just happens to be the best character for this game, because I think without Donnie, the team would be lost, because they wouldn't have any van or any technology. He was pretty much the brains of the group. A lot of people like Michelangelo because of his surfer personality, and he'd be the one that liked to try all these crazy pizzas out. They even had an episode where he was hypnotized into not eating pizza anymore. I actually have that on VHS. I think it was like a McKids, or it was brought to you by McDonald's. And Leonardo was a leader. He was usually the moral turtle, or the appointed leader by Splinter. And then Raphael was more like Raphael was really like the asshole of the group, the wise ass. There was a show on Netflix too recently. It was about like it was about, you can search Netflix and toys or something. I think maybe the toys that made us or something. And they had an hour documentary on the history of the Ninja Turtles action figures. And it was really good. It described pretty much the whole history of the show and the comic. This part's dangerous. If you fall, alright, if you fall in there, you're dead. But it was a good documentary. I recommend watching it. This is like a bonus pickup that you can find. It's not a weapon. It's almost like the star in Mario. I mean, it's really useless, because now when you go back, you'll see more enemies. Okay. I haven't seen those closing walls yet. I'm a little worried about that. Alright, this part is probably the hardest part in the game. Now, okay. It's the next part. As soon as you fit down here, it's hard to squeeze down there. You have to be pixel perfect. So once you fall down here, you'll have two walls closed. You just have to drop in and get to the bottom. Okay. Ah, okay, perfect. That pizza was suicide, by the way. There's no way you can damage that, too. So now we have the big Mouser boss. It's really easy to kill, especially with Donnie. You could just park yourself under there and hit up if you want, or if you want to challenge, you can keep on moving around. We got an appearance from the turtle blimp. And that's a nice transition from day to night. I mean, games didn't really have a lot of that cutscene stuff back then. I think this would have been a good game if it had, like, the Ninja Gaiden cutscene style. I read somewhere that this area is considered to be like the South Bronx. So basically you had like 5th Avenue, you had the Hudson River, Wall Street, JFK, this is the South Bronx. Now this area is, a place for you to get weapons. The scrolls right here, these are the most important scrolls you can get. And then you just rinse and repeat if you don't think you have enough. But these houses, other than that, are useless unless you want to rescue a turtle. I haven't seen them in so long, to be honest. Wow. And you would land right back to the entrance. Now, what's special about this area and unique for a game this old is that there are 3, I think, manholes. And when you go in them, it's just a bunch of rooms with enemies. And when you get to the end, you're looking for the Technodrome, which is like the home base for the enemy. But it's the Technodrome is in a random spot every time. So every time you turn on the game, a different exit is programmed for the Technodrome boss. So you have to get lucky. And these enemies are the hardest enemies you've encountered so far in the game. I don't know who they are, if they were in the comic or not, but I think the game developers just created them from scratch. That guy with the bubbles kind of reminds me of Metroid, which is another game I can't wait to play for you guys. And hopefully this will be where the Technodrome is. No, see, it's a dead end. So now you gotta go all the way back and try another manhole. I think this spot is a good spot to check first, though, because I think it is the easiest cave of the 3. These are like rejected enemies from other NES games. And that's Samus. Yeah, you don't want to lose the scrolls, so you can give it to another turtle. A weapon like that for Raph actually will make him a lot more useful. If those spotlights get you, I believe a lot of foot soldiers come down and fight. Ooh. See how the enemies come back? That's so frustrating. I'm surprised the cartoon didn't take any of these enemies. Because after like season 3, basically every episode was a showcase for a new action figure. Ooh. Alright, looks like we're just gonna strike out here. Well, hopefully the Technodrome is in the final cave, otherwise it's not programmed in the game anymore. Well, I guess we will see all of the caves now. It's a shame that this game, you know, is a third-party game, so you really aren't going to see it on the Virtual Console. Although, I think Nintendo did spend a lot of money to have it for the Wii Virtual Console. Because I did purchase it. I think it was only 100 points instead of the usual 500. But that's a problem with the NES Mini. I mean, I understand that games that aren't licensed by Nintendo or made by Nintendo are going to cost a lot of money, so it's almost impossible to ever see them come out for the NES Mini. It'd be nice if you could get a patch for it that would help you get more games like this. And this is an enemy that everyone remembers from the cartoon. This was a really epic boss fight back in the day. Basically, you just work to dismantle each part one by one. This reminds me of the Albatross fight in Bionic Commando. I'm not sure, but I think if you touch that electrical area, it's an instant death. I know you could break that door down too, but... Alright. So with the Technodrome disabled, now you can enter it and find Shredder. Unfortunately, there's no Krang in this game. You wouldn't see him until the arcade. These are the guys that will make your life miserable. There's two strategies to beat them, which I'll show you later. You can cheat them like that, but that is the main reason why you gather the scrolls. The scrolls, I think the scrolls might take 2 shots to beat them. I always like the graphics when you break that little cannon, how the damage looks. Luckily those stay damaged, even when you leave the screen. I remember they were like kangaroo robots in this level. There they are. hate to think how many shots... See, that's the same one. And because I backtracked, he appeared again. As I say, I hate to see how many shots it would take for Michelangelo to kill that enemy. Could probably just skip him. There comes a point in this game too where you realize you're gonna win as long as you just keep focused. You have your 4 turtles are still alive with good health, and you have your scrolls. You'll be in good shape. And there's more. 48's more than enough. Oh. It's funny, I played these games as a kid, and little by little you get better and better, and then eventually you beat the game. You can come back to the game years later, and pretty much get to the end again. It's like you have that innate muscle memory. You just know how to play it. I'm like that with a bunch of games. I don't know if all people are like that, but like when you master a game, you can come back to it years later, and the learning curve is very slow to get right back to where you were. I mean, very fast. It's like you never forget. It's like riding a bike. I don't think there's anything in here. Just a pizza. That probably could have just been a bite of pizza and he would have gotten all his health back. Watch out here, there should be a bunch of enemies coming. And here's how the scrolls work. You can actually wait till the corridors get even thinner. See, if you just stay patient, you can run them off the screen like that too. Just as enemies respawn when you keep entering the same space where an enemy appears, they'll also despawn. If you carefully just scroll them off the screen. Without the scrolls, this is probably the hardest part of the game. Besides the insta-death areas. So you can almost just avoid their beams. You have to be careful though, they'll come back now, see? That's why the scrolls are so important. That's the way to win, right? Like, just like that. So you can even use Raphael if you want, you know, as long as you have that secondary weapon. The other weapons are way less effective. Alright, this is the last hallway, I believe. And then we'll see Shredder. Alright. If you want, you can get onto the right platform too, and I believe you can catch him See the scroll? It's funny how Donnie looks like Raphael here. It's that easy. Now, if you're inexperienced, this part will be very hard. You'll lose the pattern and then it'll kill you, but if you just stay calm and focused, use your secondary weapon, you got it. I kind of hate that he turns into a human. Alright everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game. It's very nostalgic to me. Bye.